A very warm welcome to the University of Southampton's webinar. Today we are going to give a trial lecture, a taster lecture if you will, to BSc Business Management. My name is Dr. Rob Angel. I'm an Associate Professor in Marketing Research and I'm also the Director of Internationalisation for the university. May I just start off by saying that I hope that everybody is well and is keeping safe at this difficult time. And what a great honour and pleasure it is to be able to speak to you and come to you today from Southampton. We are extremely proud of our institution. As you probably know, of 25,000 universities plus in the world, the University of Southampton is rated as and ranked in the top 100. In the same token, we're also incredibly proud of our business school, which is ranked in the top 10 in the UK. And we also have pockets of subject disciplines within our school that are extremely highly rated. We're also extremely proud of our city, as you can see from those beautiful photographs, and our university campus. And I'd like to give you a flavour today of our education, the way that we teach at the University of Southampton and in the business school in particular, and also introduce you to the city as best as I can. The title of the lecture is "So You Think You Are Rational?" ? And there is a little bit of a subtext here. You may not be as rational as you think you are, and understanding and being able to apply information about where you might be less rational, or what we call irrational, could be very useful for your role as a consumer and potentially as a marketer / business person in the future. So let me ask you this question to begin with, okay? You can close your eyes if you like here. Have you ever had a friend who you think has behaved, maybe by buying something or consuming something, that you didn't think was particularly justified? Did they buy something which you thought was slightly irrational or abnormal? Do they behave in an abnormal way? Now, if you can picture that moment where you can imagine that friend behaving in the way that you don't think was quite normal, maybe they bought a phone that other people don't buy, or maybe that they bought a car which was an unusual colour, I can tell you that your friends will be thinking exactly the same thing about you. They will see some irrationality in the way that you perhaps have behaved as a consumer, as a person in the past. Now, even though we have lots of data available for doing research on different products and different services, we still make decisions which are somewhat unpredictable for business people and particularly for marketers. In fact, we call these biases. Now, these biases, whilst being perhaps unpredictable and irrational, as we become more able to understand them, they become predictably irrational. One thing that I want to talk about today is 3 of these biases that make people irrational, make consumers behave in a way that we don't necessarily expect if they were being rational, and how marketers and how business people can use this to design better products, to design better services. I'm going to do this by introducing you to several different research studies, and quite importantly, I'm going to put this in a way that will hopefully change your behavior and make you think about yourself as a consumer, and potentially, if you have your own business or you have an interest in a business, you can use that to move forward. And so these are 3 quirky questions or areas that we're going to look at today. I'm going to encourage you to think about the following: why you need to be really careful about buying a house from a DIY enthusiast. I know that sounds strange, but don't worry, we'll come to this. Why you should try and evaluate or guess the number of times that you might have seen a product or advertisement against other alternatives when you make a buying decision, and then why you should train yourself to read a news article or headline, what we call a tagline, before looking at the picture in that news article. Okay, so we're going to go through those in turn. Hopefully you'll remember these because they're quite quirky and nice. Okay, the first one. Always beware of the DIY enthusiast. Why is that the case? Okay, now again, close your eyes and imagine the following scenario. Okay, and I want you to give me an answer to this question. Now, say that your friend and his or her partner recently bought a lot of furniture from IKEA and assembled it themselves. They love the furniture. So your friend, I'll be clear here, your friend is the person who has assembled furniture. Now they love that furniture, but they're moving to an apartment where one of the bookshelves doesn't quite fit. Now you're quite happy about that because you quite like this bookshelf and you're willing to buy it from your friend if you can afford the price, okay? So to be clear, your friend has built this furniture for himself or herself and their partner, and because it doesn't fit in their new apartment, they're going to hopefully sell it to you. Now the question I have for you is, should you make this trade with 1, your friend, 2, their partner who didn't build the furniture, or 3, it doesn't matter? They're both your friends. It shouldn't make a difference. Now just consider that for a second. Now I'm guessing that most of you are thinking 3. And you'd probably be right in a very rational world. It shouldn't really make a difference who you make the trade with, who you ask how much they're willing to sell the bookcase for. There's only really one difference in this situation. One of the couple has built the bookcase, whilst the other hasn't. But research shows that actually, as a bias, an irrational bias as that, this can create a huge difference in how people behave when selling, in our case, the bookcase. Let me show you the research that backs this up. Okay, so this gentleman on your screen here is Professor Mike Norton. He's a wonderful professor of organizational behavior and psychology at Harvard Business School. And he wanted to look into this bias in a little bit more detail in his lab. He invited a number of participants to take part in an experiment, okay? Those participants were asked to do a task. The task was rather quite fun. He gave them some instructions and asked them to put together and build an origami frog from coloured paper. You can kind of see in this picture here what that frog will look like at the end of the process. At the end of the experiment, which incidentally takes quite a long time to do and is very effortful to create something that's a nice origami frog. At the end of the experiment, he asked his participants how much they would be willing to buy the frog from him for. How much they would be willing to put forward to take the frog home. And on average, from those participants, they said, yeah, around 22 cents would be about reasonable or fair. Remember, they are the ones who have built the frog, or designed or developed the frog. He then invited another group of participants into the experiment. he randomly showed them different versions and different examples of the origami frog. He said to them, how much would you be willing to pay for this frog? And he recorded the average price, which was 5 cents, 25% of the value of those people who were the builders. What does this show us? Even though the frog is exactly the same, it doesn't differ on average between the two groups, people were willing to spend a lot less on the frog when they didn't build it. When you did build it, actually, there was this intrinsic value, monetary value, associated with the product as a consequence. What does this show us? Well, it shows us a systematic bias called the IKEA effect. And it's an exaggeratedly high value and attachment that we place on items that we build and develop ourselves, regardless of actually of whether or not the product or service that we design is any good or not. We kind of see this in a lot of things that we do and we build around our home. IKEA furniture is just an example. DIYers will, for instance, put in new patios or build their own beds or workshops, and they will value that at a higher level than if they asked someone to build it. We won't notice this happening to us, but it will be there, happening in the background. But whilst this is a problem that we should all be aware of, and I would always advise, in a colloquial way, people to be wary when they buy houses from DIYers, or whether they buy a new car from somebody who has taken an interest in developing the car and playing around with the engine and that kind of thing. There are also some opportunities in this for marketers. Some of them you might have seen around before. And we say, how can this effect be leveraged? Well, you've probably seen this as you've been out shopping. Have you ever, for instance, seen these DIY cakes? You get all of the ingredients, everything is supplied, and you have to then build the cake yourself. You have to bake it using the ingredients. There is a co-creation, which means you have to put in effort. Does it mean that it tastes better for you? Sure it does. How about when you build your own bear at Build-A-Bear Workshop? This is brilliant for the organization, by the way. All of the manufacturing costs, to some extent, are taken away, but the consumer loves it because they got to co-create it. The IKEA effect is there. And I think my personal favorite example, when your fiance or even yourself, if you're the lucky one to receive the ring, gets to design their own engagement ring and is involved in the process. Do they end up loving it a little bit more? You're sure that they do. The second lesson, now that we've dealt with the IKEA effect, is also a very interesting bias. There are literally dozens and dozens of biases, and this is just one of the ones that is most commonly found amongst consumers, okay? And I'll point this one out to you. Question or the lesson is, do I actually love this product or service that I'm looking at, or am I just more familiar with it than I am other products and services? Okay, now imagine the following scenario. You visit your favorite shop. On the way through the mall to your favorite shop, you see another store with a selection of shoes in the window. Okay, so you walk past the store, you've seen that they are displaying some shoes in the window. You carry on to your store though. There are two pairs of shoes in the size for you to choose between. The first is actually the same one that you saw in the previous store in the window. And the other you've never seen before. They are hugely similar and they cost the same price. Because you are very up together with your due diligence, you check an independent review site and both score 10 out of 10. Okay, so which one do people choose most on average? So which one do you think most people would choose in this scenario? The first shoe, the second shoe, or do you think this is an arbitrary decision? On average, it's going to be around 50-50. Remember, the only thing that differs between these shoes is that you saw the first shoe on your way to the store. So you have been exposed to it slightly more than the second shoe, okay? If you were being rational, if consumers were being rational, of course, the answer would be 3. On average, it would be about 50-50. But remember, we're not rational. Let me introduce you to a very famous study by a professor called Richard Moreland at the University of Pittsburgh. Moreland was interested in whether or not our familiarity with people or objects or services had an impact on how much we liked them and how much we rated them, or the extent to which we rated them highly. So he did this really unusual experiment. He had a large class of students, and he showed the class of his students a picture of 5 different girls. These girls were all roughly around the same level of attractiveness as rated by him, and he asked his students to rate them also in how attractive to look at they found them. Now, that group of students in what I'll call here class 1 rated those students as equally attractive. There was no difference between them. They were all as attractive as each other. That was one half of the experiment, okay? The second half of the experiment is the treatment, the thing that he manipulated. So he invited the actual girls from his pictures to attend a different class. We'll call this class 2. Here's the twist. Here's the thing that was different. The girls were asked to attend each of his 15 classes with different levels of frequency. Girl number 1, we could say the girl furthest to the left, attended no times at all. She was the equivalent, by the way, of what class 1 students saw, just a picture. Class 2, the students saw the second girl on 3 occasions in the class. Now, what would happen is that these girls would come along to the class, sit by themselves somewhere near the front of the class. They would leave the classroom at the end of the lecture, and they wouldn't talk to anybody during the class. The third girl, well, she attended the class 6 times out of 15. The fourth girl, 9 times out of 15, and the fifth girl, 12 times out of 15. He then asked all of his students in class 2 to rate their attractiveness, the attractiveness of each girl. Remember, if they were being rational, they should respond in a way that wasn't dissimilar to class 1. There should be no real difference in attractiveness between the girls. But what he observed was a systematic bias. The girl who they hadn't seen, who had attended none of the classes, was ranked less attractive than the girl who attended 3 of the classes, who was rated less attractive than the girl who attended more classes, and so on and so forth. The more times the girls had been to the class, the more attractive they were rated overall, on average. This begs the question, is there a mere exposure effect where we like things, even though we don't realize, more when we're exposed to them more frequently? The answer to that question is yes. And researchers over the years have repeatedly found evidence for this bias. It's called the mere exposure effect, and it determines a preference that we have to different products, services, and people just because we become more familiar with them. Now, just as an anecdotal example here, imagine your favorite song of all time. I'm willing to bet that the first time you ever heard that song, you were rather indifferent. Maybe you were like, oh yeah, it's a good song, but nothing really special here. Then you heard the song again. I bet it grew on you a little bit. Then you heard it for a third time and a fourth time, and it slowly became your favorite song over time. That's an example of the mere exposure effect. We don't even realize it's happening to us. I bet your favorite song is probably the song that you've also heard the most frequently of all songs that you listen to. The final lesson we have here is something that's really current. I'm not sure how this situation played out in your respective locations, but here in the UK, at the height of the crisis, just as it began to become more salient in our news and coverage of our news, we found that consumers rushed out to supermarkets to buy food, which they did in excess. People stockpiled more than they had previously done, and it led to a lack of food on the shelves and a lack of food for people in the wider population. We called this panic buying. All of the major supermarkets in the UK came together and wrote a letter to the government and to consumers, basically stressing that consumers didn't need to behave in this way. There would be enough food in the supply chain to meet demand as long as people were reasonable, as long as people didn't panic buy, as long as they didn't stockpile. And this was run out in the media with news stories with headlines like, the government says there's no need for panic buying. Okay? What myself and my co-author, Ben Marden, at the University of Edinburgh noticed was that most of these headlines, most of these news stories were accompanied with pictures of empty supermarket shelves. So on the one hand, consumers were receiving the headline that there's no need for panic buying, but they were also seeing pictures of empty supermarket shelves. What happened in reality was, rather than quelling the amount of panic buying that supermarkets were experiencing, panic buying actually increased. So we decided to run an experiment to see if the pictures were responsible in part for this behavior, this irrational behavior, if you like. So we looked at two conditions. You can see them on your page now in front of you. We have identical headlines and stories underneath, but all we did was we changed the picture from one which had fully stocked shelves to one that had empty shelves. What we found was when people saw the empty shelves, they reported an 83% higher likelihood to go out and panic buy, i.e. collect and buy more items than they should or needed. This is an example of another irrational bias. But what I want to do is set you a little challenge now, okay? So the question is, why is this the case? Now, this particular study is reported in the newspaper. You can see the QR code here, and we'll also provide a link for you, which provides the news story. Please take the time to scan this and go and read the news story. We propose two different potential biases that may be behind this irrationality, but there is a third, a missing third. Here's my challenge to you. In between now and you starting at the university, I would like you to try and discover through some research what that third bias is. I'll give you a clue. It begins with an A. You can search this on the internet. Please email me at my email address, which is provided in this slide deck and will also be provided at the end, or come and visit me in my office and I will take you for coffee if you get the right answer. I'll probably take you for coffee anyway, but if you get the right answer, I'll take you for 2 coffees. No, we'll make it coffee and cake, okay? So I want you to try and find out what this bias is. Use some critical thinking. So what have we talked about so far in this lecture? We've talked about
We've lost sound, Rob.
Rob,
we can adapt.
Rob, for a moment we lost you because I think the sound was not coming through. Please repeat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hopefully you can now hear me again. So in conclusion, we've talked about 3 biases, 3 things that affect our behavior as consumers. If we know about these biases, we can use them to adapt our behavior. We can be better as consumers. We can behave in a more rational way by knowing about our irrationalities. As marketers, as business people, we can also leverage these to our advantage as well. As I mentioned before, these are just 3, and you're going to find out some of the others. These are just 3 of a plethora of biases that we need to be aware of. This type of information would be taught in a consumer behavior class or a marketing class during your studies at the University of Southampton. So this is very much a to be continued. Please let me now take the opportunity to spend a few minutes asking you to think about and listen to what makes the BSc in Business Management truly exceptional. Now, I think this is a really special program because it gives our students a very general perspective on the entire business function. It's interdisciplinary in the fact that it consists of different disciplines underneath the business umbrella. You'll learn about accounting, marketing, HR, operations management, project management, innovation, and many more different subjects. This is extremely useful for giving a very wide view of organizations and how they are able to behave and act in the marketplace. You'll learn important skills and you'll also learn lessons which will allow you to decide which area of business you want to focus on as you move forward in your career. In essence, during a degree like this, you find out what your passion is and the things that maybe you don't like as much. And that gives you and holds you in good stead for making strong and good decisions as you move forward. What you should know about the University of Southampton as a Russell Group institution, as one of the top research-intensive universities and business schools in the UK and the world, is that the way we teach is what we call research-informed. We use and take critical issues that are contemporary and research that is relevant, and we apply it in our teaching. What that means is that you are at the forefront as a student, the cutting edge, if you like, of business practice as you learn. As you go into industry, as you go into practice, you can take that cutting edge knowledge and apply it seamlessly in your roles. As we are a business school, we also, and the business school program, we teach a mixture of different aspects of the program. We teach you knowledge. Those are tools that you can use, hopefully, from the day you learn them all the way through your career. That's theoretical knowledge. We also teach you skills. You'll learn the most up-to-date software in different disciplines like analytics. You'll learn how to use those software and apply them in practice. You'll also be grounded in our philosophy of learning, which very much focuses on ethics, social responsibility, and sustainable development. We know that this is important to students. We know this is important to the general population and to businesses. And so, as a university, we try and transmit, we try and teach students those important lessons, those values. You'll also experience what we call experiential learning. We're not just grounded in the subject matter. We try and apply it in practice. You'll have the opportunity to take part in real live case studies. You'll be able to work with organizations to apply the knowledge you've learned during your assignments. You'll have the opportunity to take part in competitions that work with organizations to solve real business problems. So we're not just about teaching theory and skills, we're also about giving you the opportunity to apply those skills and work with business people and practitioners, leaders in their field. Here's an illustration of that. Some of you also have the opportunity to, if you choose, to take this experiential learning a step further. And during your third year, you can, for instance, undertake an internship. Now, we're very lucky within the business school. We're very fortunate to have an award-winning placements team who are on hand to help you and guide you in this discovery. They help you find a job. They coach you to succeed in interviews, and they help you in defining and determining which companies you should try and work with. This year, our students are working in 75 different organizations. We have 75 students out on placement at the moment, and they will work with really exceptional organizations, just a handful of which I put on the slide here for you to look at. You will also, if you're not interested in internship, have the opportunity to go and study abroad for another year. One of the great things about the University of Southampton and our business school is that because we're a top institution, other top universities in the world want to work with us and work with our students. We are partners with 26 different exchange universities across the world, ranging from top institutions like the University of Hong Kong, Tokyo, SMU, Singapore Management University, on different continents, where you will have the opportunity to go and extend your learning and study in those institutions. This is absolutely brilliant for employers as well, by the way, because of course you will have had experience in a different country and a different institution that isn't just Southampton Business School. You also have the opportunity to, for instance, attend summer schools abroad. We now are in a position where we promote our partners' summer schools, which are 2 to 6 week immersions, where you will, during the recess or the vacation period, have the opportunity to go and study with students from around the world for this short period. You're also able to, if you want to, as a mixture of studying abroad and doing an internship, work for a year in a foreign country. The Southampton Business School currently has students out in different countries doing exactly this. And we also have relationships with organizations, with Bosch, for example, where our students have exclusive placements to go and work for a year. We have a student, for instance, in Germany studying for Bosch, and they were so earlier this year. We also support you in your ambition if you want to develop your own idea, your own business. And something that's really exciting is we have an incubator lab called Future Worlds. This brings together some of the top entrepreneurs and academics in the area to help our students develop and build their entrepreneurial ideas. We have had success with a number of different business ventures in this regard, from conception through to getting funding, helping getting funding for their ventures, through to launch and execution. This is a really exciting and innovative opportunity that students have when they come and study at the University of Southampton, which supplements the award-winning advice and help that is provided by our careers placement team, and also the help that we give our students in getting jobs on campus. And this shows up in what students think about us once they leave the institution, once they go into the real world. 94% of our students will continue to go and work in full-time employment, in graduate roles, or continue with their education. And around 75% of those think that the university and the business school prepares them very well for getting and succeeding in this first role. We're extremely proud with our ability to produce exceptional graduates and help them make the transition into the workplace. Finally, I would just like to say that from my own personal opinion, whilst I've mentioned a number of things that makes our degree exceptional, what I really think makes the program and the school and the university exception is our people. I'm so proud to work in an institution that has such bright, innovative, engaging students from all across the world. It's my great honor every single day to be able to teach them, to work with them, to co-create. And I'm also very proud to work with the colleagues that I have the opportunity to. Experts in their own right in their field, dedicated to their job. I really do hope that you have the opportunity to come and experience those things and take part in this program. And we also love the place that we live and the place that we work.